What's up? What's up? What's happening? It's yours truly, Javon Freeman, back with another one. But I'm gonna say this early. I'm gonna need y'all to work with me. All right. I'm up in the Northeast. Um, Sinuses. You know, I'm just not acclimated to the weather anymore. Anyway, I'm back with y'all for another one. Right now, we are going to be going over a video by Damon Cassidy. Link to the video will be in the description. Credit where credit is due. Also, want to say add me on Instagram at b.o.m.experience. I'm also here on YouTube. Like, comment, share, subscribe, share the link. And if you've been watching this for a couple videos, definitely subscribe. It's more than worth it. All right. Yeah. Without further ado, let's just get into this. We're gonna have some fun today, huh? Mm-mm-mm-mm. It's a shame I'm sniffling on camera. That is what I don't want to do, but we're here. Let's make this full screen. Cool.
Bureau of Labor Statistics. There are 8.1 million jobs available throughout the United States, fueling headlines of a national labor shortage. And yet it takes an average of 6 to 8 months just to land a job, with 62% of Americans now living paycheck to paycheck, raising the question, why does society insist that no one wants to work anymore? While the concept of work has taken many forms throughout history, predominantly centered on seasonal agriculture, it fundamentally changed with the introduction of the Industrial Revolution, where community-driven, task-oriented workdays, largely consisting of only 4 to 6 months out of the year, were now replaced by relentless year-round factory schedules, demanding 12 to 16 hours a day from people of all ages, shifting authority from the family setting into centralized factories that introduced rigid hierarchies.
Now, I want to say I don't think that this is given enough praise for the outcome that is created. When you really pull away from that family because you're industrializing everything and you're putting the corporation first, you get what we experience today in real time. And that is a key thing that we should actively be keeping in mind. I know these corporations and jobs only thrive if we show up, but there has to be a balance. And it's a fine line between, getting the best you can for the company and then abusing what can ultimately be an aid for you. But all right, let's get into this. It's still early. Oh,
Tying productivity to physical presence, and stripping workers of autonomy while forcing them into grueling conditions, ultimately leading workers to organize and create the first national labor union under the slogan 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, and 8 hours for what you will, which prompted President Ulysses S. Grant to sign an executive order in 1869 establishing an 8-hour workday for federal employees, laying the initial foundation that would eventually become the modern work week. Meanwhile, conditions in the private sector continued to worsen. By the end of the late 19th century, manufacturing employees worked an average of 100 hours a week, with some industries demanding even more. The dangerous and monotonous nature of factory work left many workers dissatisfied, causing high turnover.
man, I just want to say that's crazy. 100 hours a week minimum, like on average, and people wonder why so many people started cheating. Man, your husband away all that time, and he's only making minimum wage. Shit, of course a woman's going to end up cheating, and then you're going to get broken homes, and then you're going to get more people in the workforce. To sit there and act like there wasn't some psychologist thinking about the chain reactions of these things or the outcomes, I find that to be false. And almost like a gaslighting effect. Like somewhere down the line, somebody knew all of this would take place. It had to, and if they didn't, oh, look at the world we got now. But let's continue though, because I'm not opposed for jobs. The snowball is already rolling. We got to get paid. You got to do what you got to do. So if you're going to work and put your best foot forward and give your all. But when you look at the economy today, man, there's a disconnect somewhere.
Turnover rates that disrupted production and created significant challenges for employers. It was in this environment that Henry Ford in 1914 addressed an exceptionally high turnover rate of 370% by
Hmm.
implementing a strategy of raising wages to $5 per day, more than double the industry standard, while introducing a
Now, excuse me. I also want to say it sounds great that they included increased wages, but look at what that has done throughout time. When you increase the wage, you inevitably take companies out of business because not everybody can afford it. This is the reason why we don't see mom and pop stores anymore. This is why we see major conglomerates of companies that are practically monopolizing the whole board. Raising the wage is not a bad thing if you already have majority of the money, because you know majority people aren't financially literate in the first place. So knowing that there's going to be even more money out there that people are going to fumble on, you're going to get even richer. Like I'm not saying that that was intentionally bad. I can see where there was positive intent for it. Um, but again, look at where things are at right now. We can see how the snowball rolled the direction it took and the damage it did throughout that path, and it's still doing in some places. Yeah.
standardized 40-hour work week, as Ford believed that shorter hours would lead to greater efficiency, as well-rested workers would be more focused and motivated, while higher wages would allow employees to afford the very cars they built, fostering loyalty and satisfaction among his workforce. And although many critics mocked Ford, predicting his decision would bankrupt the company, the day after the announcement, 10,000 workers lined up for the chance to work at Ford, willing to overlook the monotony of assembly line tasks for the improved pay and working conditions, stabilizing Ford's workforce and not only introducing the middle class, but setting the stage for FDR's the Fair Labor Standards Act in 1938, which officially established the 40-hour work week in the United States and ensured shorter hours, overtime pay, and minimum wage protections for workers nationwide. While this period unquestionably brought transformative changes that greatly improved working conditions and established critical labor protections, it also introduced deep structural issues that a booming post-war economy managed to obscure.
Grammarly doesn't just improve the
Mm-mm. You don't care about no ads. All right. Well, that's yeah.
As industrialization continued to reshape society, alongside growing resistance from the working class, John D. Rockefeller established the General Education Board to address the increasing demand for a disciplined and compliant workforce to meet the needs of factory production. Rockefeller's efforts focused on creating educational systems designed not to foster individual creativity, but to train workers for industrial environments. His advisor and co founder of the GEB, Frederick Taylor Gates, expressed this by stating, "We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers, or men of learning, or men of science. The task we set before ourselves is very simple as well as a very beautiful one: to train these people as we find them to a perfectly ideal life, just where they are." Where by prioritizing productivity and obedience over autonomy, these efforts reinforced industrial hierarchies and laid the ideological foundation for a labor market defined by control.
Man, see, this is why I said what I said prior to us even getting to that point. There was somebody smart enough that would know what the outcomes of certain things would be. Rockefeller knew, listen, we don't need you to think. We need you to be a cog in the machine and get the job done. So when you look at the rest of the world, you can see that on multiple scales. Even when you look at the American economy, right? The economy of the United States. We're always in debt, but somehow people are always wealthy. As a collective, people are always in debt, but you know. So then you look at the banking systems. If you follow the money, you know clearly where things have been going, and then you can also sit there and say, well, we know where this went. We know how that went. What was the ideologies behind it? Most people aren't financially literate. If you want to get rich, that means you want to have some advantage over somebody else. The advantage was the economy was cornered and taken over all the way down from the medical field, schooling, work practices, uh, the family sector, the nuclear family. So uh, The evidence is all around us. The point is, are we going to look at the evidence, and then are we going to put our foot forward to do better? And now, granted, I say all these things. Look, I still got to work myself. Still need jobs myself. But it doesn't take away from the fact that we should know where we've come from if we're going to know where we're going in the future. Yeah. All right, let's get back into this.
Delaying the recognition of systemic problems that would inevitably resurface.
How was my working life at Ford? I've never been to hell, but heard a lot about it. It was like working in hell. The harassment, the threats, the working conditions, and the continued watching over you by what they had called at that time starmen.
Where over time, these unresolved issues have become increasingly visible, leaving a labor market constrained by outdated structures and a workforce that feels increasingly disconnected and undervalued, specifically when it comes to the utter disaster that is applying for a job. Unlike previous generations, who predominantly secured jobs by applying in person to help wanted ads, the introduction of technology and global competition has fundamentally reshaped how people find work. Today, 98.8% of Fortune 500 companies rely on application tracking systems, or ATS, to filter and sort resumes through automated criteria before a human ever reviews them. We're up to...
Now, this is something that I think is very interesting too, because even with all these technologies, we also see in 2025 there is the issue of what is ghost jobs. And then with all these applicants and all these jobs, even if the job is real, if you don't have a certain curated portfolio, background, picture board, they'll let you sit there. Or, and now, I mean, allegedly, we can look up online and see testimonies from people that worked in these industries. I'm not saying I know, but, allegedly, certain departments will hire certain people or look over the hiring process of certain candidates, and they'll make decisions based off their own personal ideologies. And, we can't say this is not true, because now it's January 31st, 2025. We can't say it's not true, because now we're moving into a more merit-based society. We just had DEI, so you could discriminate off of things that doesn't even lend merit to what you were applying for, just so it looks good. But it's almost like a personification of what was the not the golden age, but was it the Roaring '20s? Everything looked good on the outside, but it was rusted on the inside. That's basically what it is. Our workforce, our labor market looks good on the outside. We have all these jobs and all these applicants, but wages are, wages haven't risen with inflation. Companies, it takes 6 months to, at least 6 to 8 months, like you said, to get into a job or even hear back from a job. And if they don't take that long, they'll come up with reasons to say no. And say you have too much experience, companies don't want you. So you're in a rock and a hard place.
75% of resumes are rejected automatically, often for minor deviations such as employment gaps, unconventional formatting, or missing keywords, where these inefficiencies are compounded by a complete breakdown of traditional hiring practices. Historically, hiring managers worked closely with seasoned recruiters to craft accurate job postings that reflected the true requirements of a role. Today, this process has shifted to HR departments, where 40% of US companies now outsource most, if not all, of their hiring processes to recruitment process outsourcers, or RPOs, who often rely on subcontractors. These subcontractors, in turn, use AI tools to draft job postings and screen candidates, with 40% of companies now using AI for initial interactions and preliminary evaluations, where as a result, job seekers must first pass through the ATS software, then be screened by AI tools, and undergo initial interviews with third party recruiters who often have very little understanding of the company's needs. If they then advance, they face HR screenings before finally meeting the hiring manager, assuming that the company is actually hiring for the role.
Yeah, no, that's I think that's genuine. I want to add my own personal influence into it or my own personal experience, but like I said, I still need a job. And see, just how I'm speaking, how I have to consider what I say right now. Um, it my thing is, are the people doing the work? Are you still getting your product? Cool. Are we getting paid? Cool. What people say outside the job, hey man, should you even be reprimanding them for that? Because then it really look at the world we're in. If people got to sit here and really say, damn, I'm off the clock and I can't even talk about my life on the clock, am I really off the clock? Because if I talk about my life on the clock, I could be fired when I get back on the clock. I mean, now granted, we sit here and say, well, and these companies sit here and ask, well, why doesn't this generation want to work? Why doesn't that generation want to work? And young people this, young people that. Young people have years and years and years of observation. And then we have this technology in our hands so where we can sit here and really observe this. Like, it's again, now if we want to look at this in an esoteric standpoint, you can say the chickens are coming home to roost because the lands of America, which used to be the West Indian Company, which refers to the Western Hemisphere, which would be the Americas. We weren't built off of this. The indigenous people didn't have, practices of this nature. This is new stuff. This industrial stuff is 250 years, 275 years tops at best old. So is this the chickens coming home to roost? Who knows? Who knows? It's not for me to say, but I am observing. Oh, I didn't unmute it.
The company is actually hiring for the role, resulting in a process that takes an average of 27 and a half days per role, with only about a third of US companies actually monitoring whether their hiring practices led to good employees, where this chaotic nature of the system is exemplified by one particularly ironic example. When Sebastian Ramirez spotted a job posting that required 4+ years of fast API, however, Ramirez couldn't apply for this role since he only had 1.5 years of experience, because he was the actual creator of Fast API. And this kind of misalignment between job postings and reality not only alienates qualified candidates, but also illustrates how far the hiring process has veered from its original purpose, leaving
I think that's very interesting. You're the creator of something, and it further shows the disconnect, right? That there is something actively wrong at multiple levels within this country. And when I say wrong, I'm not saying wrong to where like, oh my gosh, we need to go to war. This, that. No, because people can sit here and fight about signs on the bathroom. We got it great compared to other nations. We have it great. However, there are still key elements that stop us from truly entering into that golden age of, there aren't, the nuts and bolts aren't tightened as much as they should be. Again, I want to put my own experience. Okay, no, I don't have to. I was speaking to a friend, an associate of mine, and he had worked in a company that did a specific job, and they had specific titles and roles for it. But the job details were the exact same of another company, and he met the criteria, all the minimum requirements. He applied for all the jobs, even for a supervisor's position, because he was more than qualified. He had the experience. He ended up getting denied. So he calls back the HR department and he says, hey, I was calling just to see if there were any notes left behind as to why I didn't have this position, or why I wasn't qualified so I could be a better candidate next time out, because there's no limit on how much you can apply. And from what he told me was that they responded and just said, yeah, all they put in the notes was that you didn't have the experience. And this was interesting because he worked in that same exact field, doing the same exact job, meeting all those same requirements for, I think, like 2 to 5 years in that ballpark, something like that. Some of it because the job shifts and changes, so you get new requirements and new tasks. However, he was a more than qualified candidate, and HR is saying you don't make the, from what whoever the hiring team is, they're saying you don't have the experience, but it's the same job, just a different company. So it could be exactly that going on, where it's another company doing all the hiring stuff, but they don't know what's actually going on inside of the job, or because the resume doesn't look the way, it's not cookie cutter to how it was in prior generations, when younger generations are sitting back saying, listen, you want us to do the same exact thing that you did, but everybody knows it's failing, because if it worked, we would be doing it. Uh, it What do I know, though? What do I know? Let's get back into this.
Thousands of unemployed or underemployed workers to become completely discouraged with the labor market, if not potentially leaving the workforce altogether, just because of the difficulties in applying for a job. And we haven't even mentioned ghost jobs. According to a workforce analytics firm, Revelio Labs, an online job listing in 2024 is only half as likely to result in a hire as it was in 2020, signaling the explosive growth of ghost jobs as a corporate strategy. Where in a survey conducted by Clarify Capital, 50% of hiring managers admitted to creating ghost jobs to maintain a talent pool for future needs, while 70% reported keeping job postings open for over 6 months. This illusion is further perpetuated by AI-generated recruiters on LinkedIn, which engage candidates with fabricated resumes and work histories under false pretenses. Where a study by the
Now, hold on. Now, I'll say this. I'll never forget being in high school. This is about 2017, 2016. And the concept of making a LinkedIn page had just got to my environment. And I never forget, one of my teachers was like, hey, I think you should make a LinkedIn page. It would be great networking, this, that, and the third. So I went through the process, did the name, email, opened an account, and I'm looking at it, and I'm just sourcing through it. I'm like, wait, hold on. You have people with all these degrees up here and still looking for jobs? And nobody was able to answer that. You mean to tell me there's people with PhDs, people that worked in the government sector, people that work in specific niche fields, that you could only have that experience if you went through excess amount of schooling and had excess experience, and then knew the right hands to shake to even get into that field? And they're still looking for a job? Why would I even put myself into that pool? So I personally never even use a LinkedIn like that. I still look at it and I'm like, it's just another form of social media at this point. All this information that's now coming out, I mean, I think it's great. I genuinely believe that it's a great thing, because now we can see what's really going on, and now we can paint an accurate picture, and not just be led by some narrative that's given and spoon-fed to us. Let's get back into this.
The Stanford Internet Observatory uncovered 1,000 fake profiles tied to more than 70 companies, inundating job seekers with misleading outreach. Resume Genius estimates that LinkedIn alone may host as many as 1.7 million ghost job postings in the United States alone. Meanwhile, Standout CV reports that over a third of job postings in the UK remain active for more than 30 days without any hiring intent,
That's
highlighting
outrageous.
the global scale of this issue. where
That's
ghost jobs also
outrageous.
serve another potential avenue to rake profits, as American journalist Bob Sullivan highlights that Equifax, with the help of thousands of HR departments across the country, has built one of the most powerful private databases of Americans' personal information. Weekly contributions from 75% of Fortune 500 companies and 85% of federal agencies include data such as social security numbers, birth dates, salary histories, and healthcare coverage, while simultaneously recruiting costs remain entirely tax deductible under federal acquisition regulation 31.205-34, as long as a listing meets the technical requirements of a legitimate job posting, which is almost impossible to prove against, which creates billions of dollars of incentives for companies to perpetuate ghost jobs, conduct superficial interviews, and fabricate listings indefinitely, creating a cycle that not only alienates job seekers, but also leaves thousands of unemployed or underemployed individuals disillusioned with a system that feels rigged against them. Leading me to my final point.
From hard hats to steel-toed boots.
Yeah, we.
Them, leading me to my final point. Similar to the workers leaving Ford as a result of the monotonous and soul-sucking work of the assembly line, today's workers face a similarly challenging reality. During Ford's era, wages of $5 per day provided workers with a transformative lifestyle upgrade, enabling them to afford homes and cars and financial stability of the middle class, that in many ways justified the toll of their labor. Unfortunately, today, the economic landscape has shifted dramatically, where between 1979 and 2024, productivity has surged by over 80%, yet wages increased by only 29.4%, leaving inflation adjusted.
Now listen, I'm so glad he brought this up because I was just getting ready to bring about this. This is where social media is such a important piece to people's lives now, because if as long as you're looking at the right sources and you know how to differentiate between false information, malinformation, and accurate information, um, you can learn a lot on social media. Especially if you know how to play with the algorithms and all that stuff. I recently played with mine in the last 5 or so years, and my algorithms are very, very interesting. But oh my gosh, I was muted. Anyway, I'm glad he brought this up. Dang, I gotta look out for having the mic muted. Anyway, I'm glad he brought this up because this can also be added into the things you have to add into this is that inflation also plays a role into this as well, because the value of the dollar is decreased. So people have to work more. Um, and even with the inflation, again, when you start increasing the pay rate, well, you lose out on some stores and you end up creating an even larger wealth gap. So this was a system, as we can see, the American economy was an economy that was already set to implode on itself. As much as we try to praise capitalism long term, it is not suitable for an entire nation. Now, I also say, well, some people say, well, what about these oligarchs and families and this and the third? Yeah, I agree. You know, the concentration of wealth in certain families doesn't necessarily help, but at least you know where the money is. We don't really know where the money is in the U.S. You can follow the money, but all of it, we don't really know where it is. A lot of it gets washed, embezzled. We see it in the news media, DEI, shipping money to other countries. And let's get back into this. Shout out Damon Cassidy. Link to the video will be in the description. I love giving credit where credit is due. He does a great job at finding information and putting it in video form. I like it because I get to use it and I can sit here and say, well, listen, from somebody that actually understands the information, that has come across the same information, let me try to simplify it. Because sometimes a lot of this information, when you're first making it, and you're almost making your own primary source, you can't necessarily simplify it. You have to give it as is. But this is where someone like me can come in and say, well, look, he's absolutely right. This is stuff that we are seeing in real time. Here are the examples. Boom, 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 boom. And I try to simplify it for you, make a couple tangents, examples, a couple laterals so you can get a better understanding at what's going on.
Wages growing at a mere 0.2% annually, a substantial contrast from the 1950s, where a minimum wage worker could cover a month's rent with less than a week and a half of full-time work. And by 1956, with the federal minimum wage reaching $1 per hour, equivalent to $11.77 today, it provided enough income to support a 2-person household above the poverty line. Today, nearly 1 in 10 U.S. homes were valued at $1 million or more than double the share in 2019, where meanwhile the median home price has reached $420,000, where even the cost of college, which traditionally offered career advancement, climbed from $394 in 1970 to $10,560 in 2020, where
Somebody in the comments do the math for me, but if I'm correct, that increase on college is almost 13 times. And I'm not saying it is 13. I'm saying it's in the ballpark of 10x. That's ridiculous, right? So man, and now, mind you, so this is where we can sit here and say this is where the economy's failing, because we sat here and made a world where, yes, vocational jobs have always been there, but we've almost brainwashed the masses to say if you don't have a degree, you're a failure at life. And we know as humans, we're social creatures. The average person is a social creature that just wants to be accepted when all is said and done. So what happens is you tell the average person, go get a degree, they get a degree, and now they're living a lifestyle where inflation is shot up through the roof. Their degree is saying, yeah, we're making more money, but when all is said and done, you got all these bills. College costs more, so you got to start paying back student loan debt. There might be medical bills, but let's say you don't take out medical, the average house price, just the rent has increased. So now, even though you're making a little bit more, you're eventually you're going to start expending more money. What else? We haven't even spoken about utilities, but oftentimes utilities is not included into your rent price, so that's a separate bill. Right? And then you got to have transportation more than likely, because majority of people don't work in the communities in which they live. So that means there's travel expenses, right? We haven't even spoken about gas. We're just saying the car note. We haven't said insurance on the car. We haven't said taxes, depending on where you live. And we haven't said maintenance either, right? And then we also haven't included gas yet. And then you got to have groceries. Groceries on average now cost $400 a month. Right? Maybe even more. And it's not like you're getting a valid amount of things. Now, I also recommend that you buy in bulk. You go, you start getting your more Whole Foods. You get your meats, your cutlery, and chop your own meats, because think about it, when things are pre-made for you, there's a cost for that as well. So, we haven't even added in home insurance. Renter's insurance if you're renting. Still got to pay taxes on everything. So even through all of that, right? Let's say you live in a state where your state is in debt. You got to pay taxes just to get your state out of debt. And that doesn't even show up to if you have potholes in your road and that gets filled. You see, so even though you have this degree and you may be making, let's say, $120,000, somewhere down the line, you're still expending 120, 130. What is there to really save? And now say you get your debt cleared, right? Because again, I'm not saying school is an absolute scam. What I am saying is it is useful if you go into a field where that degree is necessary. Say you want to be a surgeon. You need that degree, because that degree isn't just saying that you are adequate in what you learned. It's also showing that the federal government is going to back you or stand up for you, support you, should you get into that field and a situation arises to where your practice is in question and whatnot. Um, Even if you want to be a lawyer, the government is saying, yes, we are uh, supporting this person and becoming a lawyer to represent the law in this system and these lands and things of that nature. So it could work out. I'm not saying it's an absolute waste, but then you get a certain degree, and like most people, they don't even have jobs that have anything to do with what they got a degree for. You lost out. You acquired debt, which is now the equivalent to a person with bad spending habits, consumer debt, and you're both in the same boat. You know, let's get back into this.
Every single year, we all realize that our purchasing power is ultimately less than the year prior, where since the 1970s, the dollar has lost about 95% of its value, making the bare necessities feel completely out of reach for many. And as we begin to
Let's bang
conclude,
for your
for
buck.
me to give a topic like this justice, I believe that we have to look at the question, why does nobody want to work anymore? Different than the way that we continuously hear about it and the way that we think about it in ourselves. No matter what, we've all found those times where we're driving on a late Tuesday and traffic is extra heavy, or you're on a walk and you see a bunch of people also walking, and you think, does nobody work anymore? What I'm attempting to do with this channel is to show the ideological reasons we think of work being work, or the reasons that we have led to this point with these systemic issues, with all of these many different components. With this one in particular, the way that I'm trying to get us to this destination is to look at the reason of what it is that the reason why we're doing things. So you buy a car because it's supposed to get you from A to B. So say the Model T, that was incredible. It got you from A to B. But now with all of the many different cars we have, what value is it really providing past the satiated need of just getting me from A to B?
I think that is a great point. That is a great point. There was a study done, um, and it was about ice cream and how when you have so many options, you inevitably get a form of paralysis, almost like a mental paralysis, and you can no longer choose. And then you end up choosing one ice cream flavors that eventually, the more you go and the more that these flavors are presented to you, you end up choosing flavors that don't even provide true enjoyment that you may like. And because you didn't even like it, you also don't even consider the fact that, or not because you didn't like it, one, you didn't like it, and then on top of it, an added negative to it is that you've now taken on more than likely more negative side effects of having so many options. So what they talked about in this study was that instead of just having your regular strawberry, vanilla, and chocolate, you ended up having 24 flavors, and then you get 12 toppings of your choice, right? All which you can pay for and whatnot. But the fact that you have access to so much, it's like, okay, you know that you like your chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, but you say, yeah, I'm gonna try mint chocolate chip today. Cool. But then you say, oh, I'm gonna get my regular toppings, which may be some sprinkles, some cereals, some syrups, and whatnot. So as opposed to getting what you naturally would get, and then sticking to your routine and saying, oh, okay, I'm gonna go work out. I had ice cream, this, that, and the third, because ice cream made you feel good, because it was a reward at that point. You ended up getting a flavor that you may not have even liked. You spent the money, you had all your toppings, and you said, dang, I spent all this money on it. I'm gonna at least finish it to get my money's worth. But you didn't like it. You're beating yourself up subconsciously now. You might miss a workout. That chain reaction, even though it sounds drastic, is very real. And now you're sitting here having a question, if you're aware of it, that you no longer have the benefit of getting ice cream. So because it's no longer a reward. There's so many options and so many flavors.
The satiated need of just getting me from A to B. The reason that I say that is this whole entire script made me think about that story of the fisherman that all he loves to do is he loves to fish. And he brings his fish home, he feeds his little village or his little community, and that's what he does day in and day out. An American businessman goes over to him and he says, wow, it's great what it is that you're doing. You know how much money you can make doing this? And then he breaks down how if you do this and you sell an extra fish, then you're going to be able to hire an extra person. And with 2 people, you can do even more fish. And you scale the business. And then he says, and then you can retire. What are you going to do when you retire? And he says, I'm going to fish. And I think I butchered the heck out of that story. But the point of the matter is, when you realize that for the majority of human history, the way that we are biologically wired is not the way that we work now. And that isn't me just trying to say, oh, everybody should work from home or whatever that people are going to try to project. What I'm trying to say is that the system that we are working at isn't working, and it didn't work 100 years ago. The only
Listen, I think I said in a prior video, I have a weird way of speaking things into existence, or just like, being ahead of the game. Somebody play this back and clip where I said, we can see it doesn't work, and now where he says, it doesn't work and it didn't even work 100 years ago. Maybe my observation skills are wrong. Maybe I'm not really seeing the world how I'm supposed to be seeing it. I don't know. Who am I? I'm nobody.
only reason the workers came back to the Ford factory was because the wage doubled. Now, I guarantee you, for any employers watching, double the wage, you're going to have more than enough good workers there. Now, I would argue that as a nation, we need to be increasing wages. It's unbelievable how stagnated it is. And we continuously keep chopping the feet of our businesses, of our infrastructures, to try to get some level of efficiency or some level of, cutting the bottom line to be able to make sure that the stock price is good and whatnot. When in reality, we're forgetting what Henry Ford said. I want to be able to give time to the worker so he can be more efficient, and give him money so he can buy my product. We are squeezing this lemon out so tight that soon we're not going to be able to have the ability to consume the products that we're working for. Now,
That's a great point. Because now let's think about this, right? What about all the Chinese people, or let's just say Asians, right? Because it might not be China. What about all the Asian peoples that sit there and make iPhones? I think the number one phone company in Asia is Huawei, something like that. Or it might have been a couple years ago. You know what? Let's look this up real quick. Number one phone company in Asia. Okay, Apple and Samsung. Okay, so in China, Huawei is number one. Japan Line is number one. South Korea is Kakao. No. You know what's crazy? I took South Korean martial arts. I don't even speak the language. I don't even have an inclination on how to speak the language. It's a damn shame. I might pick it up later. All right. The overall, Apple is number one. That's cool. But you see in China, it's certainly not a number one when you start getting into it. And China is one of the major countries in Asia. So, oh, damn. My mic was muted again. I don't know how long that was muted for. Oh, that is so embarrassing. I would just call it as me being under the weather. I've been sneezing, blowing my nose. I've been putting Vicks on my nose this whole time. Like, I'm doing my best here. I'm doing my best. And I still ended up predicting what he said in this video. Y'all need to give me credit. It's all right. I'm going to give credit to him, though.
I talk like that, largely I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the person that has judgments already on this topic. But I feel like what the issue is now is that at some point, there was a time in history where you were working maybe for your lord or for whatever, but you were working in the little area that you had granted to you. Work was designated around meal times, with almost always, historically proven, a nap was calculated in there. That is for a fact. Then at some point,
Absolutely
we
right.
hit this unique stream of economic prosperity here in the United States. And while work was not necessarily fulfilling, you had the national sense of unity through the Cold War and just coming out of World War II, but you also had wages that could basically buy you anything that you wanted as long as you just literally worked hard and saved money and sacrificed. Then we come to the baby boomer generation, where that begins to deteriorate. The baby boomer generation worked more than the silent generation, and you can see that their priorities started to fixate on the material goods. It was less about the community aspect. Gen X was the first generation that worked less than their parents. And what you can see is that this is following in the same historical pattern time and time and time and time again, because it's not working. And I think really I'm just trying to give an extra talking point in this discussion of, why do people not want to work anymore? It's not people don't want to work anymore. It's that you don't want to work for a job that's paying you nothing. You don't want to go spend all of the time that you have to then come home and eat 5 beans and a Frito because you can't afford anything else. That's just
Five
common
beans and a Frito
sense.
is crazy.
You also don't want to work for something that maybe you are making good money, but it is so soul-sucking, it's unbelievable. I think also we're in a time where we need to be respected more. I think as an individual, we are being attacked by all of these ideologies, all of these beliefs we're supposed to have, all of these different things that, hey, I kind of just want to be seen as a human being. I just want to be seen like, maybe if I know my job doesn't matter, I at least feel like I'm appreciated in some way.
Now taxes is getting up to 4.
He makes a very valid point. We don't treat people as humans, and that goes back to the quote that he said earlier. We don't want people to be thinkers. We want people to do their jobs. 1 second. Oh man. Oh.
As a teller, complaining, I'm not complaining, but when I first got hired at the bank at 18 as a teller, my raise at the end of the year was 10 cents, so a dime, 0.10. 5 years later, after my first year really performing as a banker, the top producer in my branch, if I wasn't capped. So because I was at a lower tier, I was capped. If I wasn't capped, top producer. My raise was 11 cents, 0.11, a dime and a penny. The person that had been working there since I was born, with kids a month younger or older than me, his raise was 14 cents. So this isn't, I'm being entitled. This isn't an issue with me. This is, hey, we're all getting hosed. And for some reason, it's better to point fingers than to say, hey, we're being hosed. We're all being hosed. That was one of the reasons why I quit my job. I told my manager, I will never be able to afford a family working here. And he couldn't comprehend it. And that's simply just because
He's absolutely right. And this is what I think is a major gap between generations, is that I try to have some compassion for the elder generations. And I say elder not necessarily meaning you've earned the right to be an elder. I say elder in just terms of you're older. Because there are elders who've, given back and have earned the not just the physical but the spiritual right of eldership. Um, excuse me. So many people are just used to, do what you're told, go to work, get paid, go home. I'll never forget when I first started working, that was told to me, hey, you're not there to talk. Just go do the job, do what you're told, and go home. And it was cool and all, but after a while, it's like when there's problems that directly play on you and others, how do you not say something? And this says a lot about people. Let's get back into it. We're almost done.
Because of the generational divide. He had that ability to already buy a home. He already had kids. But for me to come out, I can't do anything. I literally can't buy anything. My only hope was creating this channel when I had 500 subscribers. I don't know. I think I've thought about this conclusion so much because I really wanted to give it justice. But something that just keeps reoccurring in my head is that it feels like we're now living in a life with a preconceived agenda that this is what you're going to do. And if you make a slight mistake, or this is what you're going to do, and you have a chance of doing what you want to do, but if you make the slightest mistake, it is so incredibly difficult to not do what you are being forced to do. I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah, love this topic. Love what we're doing with this channel. Got a lot of podcasts coming out soon.
All right. Yeah, that was a great watch, if you ask me. All right, I'm back. Yep. I think that was a great watch. Very informative. And it just goes to show that, again, even in the generations, this isn't just something that people are saying to say. It's not like people are just sitting here wanting to be rebellious. After a certain point, people are like, listen, we just want things to be all right. We just want to sit back. You can fight for but so long before you say, all right, I'm tired of fighting. You can sit there and play the video game for so long before you say, I don't want to play the video game anymore. You can eat for so long before you say, I don't want to eat. So I think it was a great watch. I don't want to get too far into it. It was long enough. This was fun. Tap back in with me. Like I said, credits to the content creator. Link will be in the description. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Turn on the notification bell as well. Also on Instagram at v.b.o.m.experience. Tap in with me. Email me videos. DM me. It is me responding as of right now. I'm not some super big rich guy who doesn't respond to his messages. To a degree. I mean, if it's worth responding to, with respects and whatnot. But yeah, this was fun. Till next time. Ciao.